the rest of the agenda, I'd like to call for just a moment of silence to honor the 9/11 and the incident that happened 9/11 many years ago. So let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Moving on to item A2, I'd like to welcome all our guests this evening. Thank you for being here. No sé si hay necesidad para traducción al español. If not, thank you, Emma, for being here. Moving on to item A3, I will entertain a motion to approve this evening's agenda. Well, we can't do that. As you guys can see, we do not have quorum this evening. And so most of our action items will be held over until Wednesday at noon. And so we will go through the rest of the agenda without any action taken. So moving on to item B1. I don't believe there's any public comment. Item B2, board member reports. I know that legislative report, I think you will share at our next board meeting an update.
Yeah, I don't have anything to report today.
Okay. I do know also that we were able to visit as a board Scootney Springs Elementary this last week, and was going to open it up for the board for any comments, anything that you would like to add about the visit. We could start with our student reps.
Always put the pressure on us. It's fine.
I really liked the when they had the two teachers in the classroom. I thought that was really cool. And then I also liked how all the teachers are super, super interactive with their kids. I really liked that.
Thank you.
It's obviously been a while since I've been there, not as long as like other people, but it's changed so much, and I think it's changed a lot for the better. And I think it's awesome just seeing that in a short amount of time, so I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It was good to see the new administration. I was impressed. I like there's some outside the box thinking going on, like the two teachers in the classroom and in the other classroom where they took the students who had the greatest need and were able to provide a setting where they could get the help that they needed. And so it's good to see some innovative thinking and some ability. And I guess what's cool for me too is that the principals at the site can feel like they can do something a little different as long as it's still fitting within our vision. And I hope that they feel that way at every school in our district. Other than that, I enjoyed the data that was presented as well, and not much to add besides that.
Katie?
I'd just like to go back. I really like how they taught the classrooms based on where the child is at. They did it based upon test scores, and I think that's really great because then you are teaching to the child rather than just to the standard, and I think that was really cool.
Thank you. Kudos to the administration at Scootney. I think it's very obvious that there's some great things happening over there. Again, I have to piggyback what they've said already, but the team teaching and the kindergarten class that I think is fantastic, out-of-the-box thinking, like Rob said. And so very, very, as a board member, I appreciated the presentation that the administrators gave to us because you tied it to our policies. And so that's really what the board wants to see, is how you can tie your data to the policies that we have. And so I personally really appreciated that. So thank you guys so much. You guys did a great and fantastic job. So kudos to you, and I look forward to your presentation this evening. Moving on to item B3, student representative reports.
I can go first. I was actually approached by a teacher today. Everything's going really good at OHS right now. You know, we're finally getting in the rhythm of school again, so that's great. But a teacher came up to me and asked me, because we had pause today, if we're even doing senior projects still. Because they're not sure what to do with that, and therefore we can't move on with it.
I think Pete is well equipped to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Test. There we go. So we had an opportunity, Amy Paris, our Director of School to Career Initiatives, and Alejandro Vergara, once we got feedback from the board on the expectations around approval of district operating policies versus policy governance issues. Our follow-up meeting with Mr. Vergara, the one piece we needed to tighten up was what's the expectation to meet the standard for a culminating project. So I know he's in a position to share with his teachers and his staff members that this is what the culminating project will look like for your class. It will not be a senior project. But we had to make sure that we met the standards of providing you an opportunity to communicate with the community. Here's what I've worked on, to share your plan, and to talk about where you're going after high school. So the short answer is you will not have the traditional senior project experience that we've had in the past, but you will have a culminating experience that you'll share with the community.
And will we be informed of that, like the actual seniors, anytime soon? Because I know the senior project was something we did individually. So if they don't know that we have something different, will we be informed soon, I guess is my question.
Yeah, what Mr. Vergara was waiting for is some clarity from our opportunity to get together with Mrs. Paris. And then he wanted to present that, in an all-staff setting. So you've probably had a couple opportunities to sit through Husky Futures. And so there were some components that you had around the school rules and some of the changes that came. I think he was really trying to honor the process of the RSVP program that you guys went through last year, that student voice. And perhaps it's not happening as quickly as you need, but just, I guess you could share with your classmates moving from here that you're not going to have that senior project. And I'll communicate with Mr. Vergara that the urgency about getting this message out to students and staff.
I don't really have any issues to report or anything. It was pretty rocky the first 2 weeks, but we're getting into the groove now, so it's all good.
Thank you, Isabel. All right. Moving on to item C, under administrative, Dr. Hurst will run those items.
Yes, we have a number of items under item C. Number one, required approvals. We're going to have to table that item until Wednesday. We do not have a quorum. So I'm going to move to superintendent comments number 2. And we have 2 individuals that we would like to introduce to our community. The first being Dr. Brian Bodo. And Dr. Brian Bodo will be our Executive Director of Business. We're very excited to have him on board. And we're going to just ask if you would just come, take a mic, or have the mic and just say a few words.
I'll just pick up the whole thing. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I'd just like to say it's my pleasure to have joined Dr. Hurst's staff here in Othello. Just a little bit about me. I'm a native of upstate New York. However, I did my graduate work here in the state of Washington, having graduated from both Washington State University and the University of Washington. So I guess I'm split evenly between the Cougars and the Huskies. So although I'm a Husky now here in Othello. So it's a pleasure to be on board. I have a wife and 2 small children who will be joining me here later this month. We're very excited to be back in Central Washington. My wife does have a history in this area, and so we are excited. I'm excited to be back, and she is excited to be here soon. So thank you very much.
So where in upstate New York?
Syracuse.
I was born in Oswego.
Okay. Yeah, born and raised on the north side of
Thank you, Dr. Boda. We also have Mrs. Miriam Ransom, who we're very excited to have also, who is the new VP of McFarland Middle School. Can you come and just introduce yourself?
Well, I've met some of you already, but my name is Miriam Ransom, and like Dr. Hurst said, I'm the vice principal at McFarland Middle School. So I've been teaching for quite a while. I have 18 years of teaching experience, 5 years as a dean of students, and this is my 2nd year as a vice principal. So I spent 1 year in Port Angeles last year. Before that, I was in Bremerton for 3 years, Moses Lake for 2 years. I was in Clover Park, Lakewood High School for about 7 years, Tacoma for about 6 years, Florida for about 1 year, Kent for another year. So I have a wide range of experiences. So I'm glad to be here in Othello. I feel like this is actually going to be the place where I'm going to retire. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to stay. My family's here with me. I have 3 kids. Okay, no, they're all grown, but they're still kids. 20, 21, and 22. I have one here with me now. He'll be going to Spokane Community College next year. So after that, I'm all done. You know, so. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. I'll be looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And as we stated, we're very excited to have both of them join our team. And next, we have a report from Scootney Springs Elementary School. So we're going to have Principal Boulevard come up. Awesome.
Okay, is it okay if I stand over there?
Sure.
Okay. I just feel like I gesture a lot, so it's nice to be able to see what I'm gesturing to. So this is Scootney Springs, kind of our big picture. A lot of our work at the retreat and our orientation day was what you're going to be seeing here, which was developing our focus for the year, developing our direction and where we're going, and why. So what we started with was the big picture. And you did reference this already. The big picture is really the ends policies determined by the school board. That's all of the work that we're doing, is working to make sure that those things are what's happening. And then, then we've got the district vision, mission, and goals, specifically focusing on reading comprehension and math concepts and procedures in support of those ends policies. Our building goals in reading and math are supporting the district vision work, and then our teacher goals also ought to be tying into that. So if we look at this, everything is supporting those district ends policies, and those ends policies are also supporting the teacher goals. So that's very cohesive. We're all working in the same direction. We're all trying to accomplish the same things. So next we looked at our why. Why are we doing this work? Why are we putting things into practice this year that maybe are a little bit different or are going a little bit deeper than we had in years past? So we looked at some of the data for 2016-2017. We looked specifically at our foundational reading skills and then reading comprehension and math concepts and procedures, because those are the district areas of focus.
So the first data point that we looked at is our RGR assessment data. And RGR stands for Really Great Reading, which is the intervention program that really focuses on decoding and phonics. So when we look at this data, we have some things to celebrate. If you look at all of the grade levels, we made improvement and growth. And that's really what we're looking at. The one that we were really excited about is our kindergarten. That's showing that 97% of our students are leaving kindergarten with those pre-reading skills. The next point that we were really excited about is our second grade. As you can see here, they really made huge growth in that grade level. And this is showing us that the program is working. We're getting better at it. But this also shows us that we're not where we want to be. So our goal is to get every second grade student to reading. It's so important that they have the reading skills so that we can focus 3rd through 5th on comprehension. And so the second data point that we looked at was our Smarter Balanced assessments. And this is where we measure that comprehension. So this is our 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. In the first column will be Scootney. The second column is the district. And the third column is the state. And again, when we look at this, we have some celebrations because we're a little bit ahead in every grade level above the district, but that's not where we want to be. We're focused on being up and above, exceeding the state. So as you can see, we have our work cut out for us. We have a big job ahead of us. The second part that we looked at, within the Smarter Balance, we took out just the reading claim. And the reason that we wanted to focus on this and look at this data, because this is our district focus. And so when you're looking at this data, again, we have Scootney, the district, and the state in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. This very top part are the students who exceed the standard. This middle part are the students who are near or at standard. And where our real big focus is that little bit at the bottom those kids are below standard. And our job and what we're focusing on is how to move those kids from not meeting standard up to near or at standard. So we wanted a little more laser-like focus. We wanted to look at the data in a different way. And so we started with cohort. So this is last year's fifth graders. This is this year's fifth graders. So when we looked at this data, we saw a trend that we didn't expect and actually really didn't like. So if you look at the fifth graders last year, when they were in third grade, they were here. In fifth grade, they make gains. In fourth grade, they make gains, but in fifth grade, they dropped. And so our conversations and our focus is, what happened? Why did we see this? Because what we want to avoid is this happening again. We want to push that bar to make sure that we are reaching higher. So we're looking at data, we're looking at what resources, are we using them effectively, and also our time. Like, how are we spending our time? Is it going to be the most effective? Then when we looked at the trend, we saw something a little bit different that was really kind of interesting. Because with a few little highs, we noticed that we have a lot of straight lines. So we thought, well, at least we're consistent. But then we thought, well, maybe complacent? And so our job is to make sure that we're always pushing that bar to make sure that we are going higher. We don't want to be complacent. Consistency is good, but not at this level. We want to push that up. So then we took a look at our math data. And again, it's that same pattern, Scootney, the district, and the state. And we had a little more reason to celebrate because we are still ahead of the district, but we are close. We're getting really close to the state, but our job is to exceed the state. So we're looking good. We're on the right track, but we have to keep moving forward. And within the Smarter Balanced Math, we took out the concepts and procedures claim, which is our district focus. And again, we are looking at this very bottom part because our job is to take these students who are below and move them to near or at proficiency. So we have our work cut out for us, but we are pretty clear where we are and what we need to do. And so, again, we looked at cohort, and in the math, it's really easy to see. We kind of have that flat line again. So again, our job is to move that bar, set expectations of ourselves and of the students to keep raising it higher.
Okay, so with all that in mind, we came up with a focus for the year. And our focus for the year is, what are we going to do to help push us forward? What are we going to do to help move us forward? How are we going to make sure that we are supporting teachers in meeting their goals, and supporting the school in meeting their goals, and supporting the district in meeting their goals? How are we going to push that forward? So our what this year, we are focusing on intentionality, community, and engagement. And these numbers next to the intentionality, community, and engagement are the effect size from John Hattie's work. So if you'll go ahead and slide up. John Hattie's work is basically a compilation of a lot of research that says, how effective is this? And all of that research is given an effect size. 0.4 is considered the hinge point. This is, if I put in a year's worth of effort, that's how much growth I should make. But 0.4 just keeps us where we're at. It doesn't move us forward. It doesn't close the achievement gap. It doesn't make up those 2 or 3 years that students need to make up if they're behind. So what we're really looking for are things that are over here in this area that can make 2 years growth, that can really be effective in helping students make up for lost time, close that achievement gap, and move forward. So the next. Thank you. So with intentionality, what we're really looking at is another word for is teacher clarity, which is a school-wide or a district-wide focus. But for intentionality, what we're really looking at is are you being intentional about what's being taught? Do you know what you're teaching and why? It's not just that I opened the book and that's the next page, but why are you teaching it? What is it that your kids need to learn from that? Do you know what their learning intention is for that lesson? And do They know what their learning intention is for that lesson. Success criteria is, how will you know when they've learned it? How will they know when they've learned it? What does it look like if I'm successful in this lesson or in this activity or in this learning? We're also looking at providing feedback. Feedback can have a huge impact on student learning, and what type of feedback. So not just good job, but when you did this, it helped you do this. So really constructive feedback that helps them learn and grow and become better learners. And then just making learning visible in the classroom. And that, teacher clarity, has that effect size of 0.75. So if 0.4 is 1 year's growth, 0.75 is almost 2. So we want to make sure that this is where our teachers are spending their time. They're spending their time with intentionality. They're spending their time making sure they know what they're teaching and why, and that they're helping kids understand what they're learning and why, and what is it going to look like, because that's going to have a much stronger effect than maybe some other things that they might be spending their time on. So this is some examples of this happening in our classrooms. I just took some photos, and I know photos are not nearly as powerful as seeing it happen in the classroom. And this is just, it's written, but a lot of the power comes from the conversations you have with the kids, and those conversations are happening. So I can write up that my math focus today, I can practice making 10 and adding to a multiple of 10. But the power comes from when I'm teaching that lesson, and I say, today we're going to practice making a 10 and adding a multiple of 10, and you're going to practice that, and you'll know you get it when. You'll have a chance to work on your own. You'll have a chance to work with a partner. So that way kids know what they're learning and why. And those conversations are happening also. It's just hard to take pictures of those. The next piece is community. And community to me is huge. This directly ties back to that ends policy 3 for me, where we're really helping create citizens of a much larger world who are responsible, who are respectful, who know how to engage in the community, and are able to make those good choices because of their social emotional learning. So it encompasses for me building those classroom communities, building relationships, working on the social skills that you need. How do you say hello? How do you make a friend? That's something that we have to explicitly teach kids, and maybe we're not doing as great of a job with that as we could. But then also the social emotional learning. What do I do when I'm upset? How do I tell somebody that I'm angry? How do I get help if I need it? How do I notice that my friend is upset and reach out to them? So those kinds of things. Behavior is kind of a piece of that, and behavior last year kind of rose to the top as an area where we needed to have some clarity and we needed to have some additional focus. So this is a multi-tiered behavioral support system, and the idea of multiple tiers is that not every kid needs the same supports, that most kids are going to fall down here in this section where the overall, the general strategies are going to be effective to helping them follow the rules. They're going to follow the rules because they're the rules. They're going to follow the rules because if they don't, they'll get in trouble. So these kinds of things in here are things that we're doing classroom-wide to help support kids with their behavior and their learning. And in here we've got things like the success criteria, showing kids what does it look like if you're following the rules. What does it look like if you're following the procedures or the routines correctly? We have character counts. We have this morning meeting, or social emotional learning, is something new that we're implementing this year as an avenue for teaching social emotional stuff. So this is kind of stuff that's everyone's doing in the classrooms. This is very proactive. It's not reactive at all, and it's for all of the kids. But you've got those kids who are going to need a little bit more. So again, being proactive, being supportive. How do we help them be successful? You're noticing that there aren't punishments up here. There aren't consequences. These are supports to help kids be successful. And by doing it proactively, when you have those kids who aren't successful down here, we have resources in place to help them get back to here. And then, of course, you're going to have those kids who need a little bit more intensive support. So this is something that we've worked on as a staff. So community, student-teacher relationships is a huge piece of that, intentionally building those relationships. And that has an effect size of 0.72. So again, it's a very high effect size. But also kind of going into that community piece for me, we also have classroom behavioral. So those behavioral supports has an effect size of 0.63. Classroom management has an effect size of 0.52. Cooperative learning has an effect size of 0.59. Classroom cohesion has an effect size of 0.53. All of that is part of that community building piece that really helps kids be able to learn and to get to the space where they feel safe, they feel comfortable, they can take risks, and they can learn. So we're spending a lot of time there on intentionally building classroom community. So this is, again, pictures of a little bit of that. These are kindergartners playing a snowball game where they're greeting them. So everyone has their name on a piece of paper with their picture, and they crumple up theirs, they throw it into the middle, they pull one out, and that's the person they greet. And they are so excited to do this. They get theirs, they go find that person, they tell them good morning, they talk about things like eye contact, they're learning language, and they're learning how to greet somebody. So this is even at kindergarten. We've also got some social emotional stuff there going. What is a good friend? What does a good friend do? What does a good friend say? What does a good friend look like? And then some morning meeting stuff. So all of this is different avenues of helping to intentionally build that community and intentionally build those relationships. And then the last piece is, of course, engagement. So engagement is very interesting. To me, it includes active participation, meaningful activities, and motivation. But engagement's kind of an interesting one because there are different ways to be engaged. You can be engaged very passively, like you all are right now. You're all very engaged, but you're passively engaged. You're listening. You're thinking maybe about what I'm saying, but you're not doing anything. You're not involved in the learning. And it makes a difference. So we're looking for active participation in meaningful activities. If you want to scroll up, what's interesting about engagement is you notice there are two different effect sizes. So engagement just in general has an effect size of 0.58, which is fine. But when you make that active engagement, meaningful activities, and up doing something, the amount of time spent doing an activity or talking to your partner about an activity or experimenting, that jumps all the way up to 1.09. So we want to look at active engagement and how do we make learning activities where kids can actively be involved in their learning. So again, it's a picture. I have video of this, but I wasn't sure how well video would play in here, and I didn't want to risk it. So these are kids skip counting in first grade, get really excited about it. This group loves their skip counting, and they get so excited. I wish you could have been there. It was loud, and it was noisy, and they were doing it, and they were excited about it. And it was the second week of school, and they were counting to 100. And then they were skip counting by twos starting at 17. And then they were skip counting by 10 starting at 8. And then they were skip counting by 10 backwards starting at 93. So they were actively engaged in manipulating numbers and skip counting. So it was really fun. And then just bringing it back to our why. This is our why. Because every single one of those students deserves to be successful, deserves to leave being able to read and to write and to do math and to have whatever future they choose and not have any doors shut because they don't have those skills. And then just bringing it back to our big picture.
Great. Any questions or comments from student reps or the board? I do have to say, Deborah, I so appreciate the whole presentation, but the multi-tiered behavioral support piece is huge for me as a board member, and also as the administrator of the juvenile court, because when we teach these kids in a classroom how to behave better, it keeps them in school. The hope for me is that as they get into the middle school and the high school, is that there are less and less kids being suspended, because the majority of the kids that we deal with in the juvenile court system are kids that have been are always being suspended. And so this is a very important piece, and so I really appreciate that at the elementary level. So thank you.
Can I
Sure.
comment? So yeah, I just wanted to say that if you're looking at what kind of a punishment or what kind of a stick is going to be big enough to keep these kids in class, you're not going to find it. But if you look at what's going to motivate them to stay here, nobody wants to be a bad kid. Like, nobody wants that. But what you have to do is find the motivation to keep them there. Find them the supports, find them what they need, find them their motivation, and keep them in the classroom. Like, you're going to be so much better off, because eventually your stick doesn't get big enough. So
Agreed. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we have several items going from item 4 down to item 8. We are prepared, Board President, to share this again with the board, because we will need input, feedback from the board. So we'll do that on Wednesday again. But we will share also right now. We're going to have Dr. Boda come and talk about the next 3 items. One is the change order for tennis courts, a timeline for tennis courts, and then also he's going to provide the status on land lease. Once Dr. Boda is finished, we're going to turn it over to Sandra Villarreal. She's going to come and talk about contracts, July to June, and then extracurricular contracts also. So we'll turn over to Dr. Boda.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hurst. Starting out here in regards to the tennis court project. I'm sorry, you can head back up to COP for tennis courts. There are 2 additions for this project. The first one is an additional dry well, single bore dry well. The architecture firm, as well as the City of Othello, has determined that this project requires an additional dry well to be installed. The additional price for that is $3,304.25. In addition to that, there is some fencing connectors that need to be purchased. Just a brief background on this. The fence on the downhill slope was removed by the contractor. It was actually removed for free by the contractor because it kind of got in the way. And so these connectors, at a cost of just under $2,000, $1,920.86, are going to utilize the fencing in place for the tennis court and connect them to the other 2 existing fences as well. The other 2 fences that will be installed in order to replace the aging fence that was removed. These are just connectors. This is not a new fence. And you can see on the second document, placement is shown. Moving on to the following item, a timeline was requested. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Questions?
Yeah. So I know it's your first week, so if you don't have the answer, that's okay. But I'm curious about the decision. Do you know why the decision was made to remove the old fence?
Yes, the decision was made. It was a joint decision. It was made by Orland. That was part of it. The old fence was quite. It was not aesthetic. It was very old. It was very tattered. It just did not look pleasant. The contractor who was putting in a retaining wall there, I believe, was also running into a lot of problems between trying to get around the fence. And so they said, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier if we just yank this fence out. And so the combination of the dilapidated condition of the fence and to enable the contractor to install the retaining wall, they yanked it out.
Okay.
From what I understand, the fence that will serve as the fence would have been there regardless. So there would have been 2 fences, the old tattered fence and then this additional tennis court fence. And this simply removes the old one.
But the reason we need to connect them is because that fence just goes around the tennis courts. It would not have necessarily been a fence to keep out someone from just walking into that area.
Exactly.
correct?
The connectors make it, in essence, a fully functional fence surrounding the entire project.
So we're talking about $2,000 for 50 feet of fence. Am I right? No,
30 feet.
60. 47 feet on one end, 14 on the other.
That is correct. And the actual connectors, which allow the two different types of fence to be connected.
Okay. And then my question on the dry well. Was this something that the city added in, or was this just something that was overlooked by the architects and was in city administrative code? Do you know?
Yes, I do. I have a email here from the architect, and it's probably easiest if I just read it.
Okay.
In regards to the added dry well at the south end of courts number 1 and 2, the intention was to use the existing dry well, as we thought that the existing dry well has handled the drainage for the existing bus parking for over 15 years. Also, there are 3 additional dry wells in the parking lot south of the courts that could and would take any overflow. When the city required that I do a dry well sizing calculation, it revealed that an additional single barrel dry well would be required to meet the standards without overflowing stormwater onto the parking lot and the courts. Before adding this dry well as a COP, I checked with Orland to see if he had any issues with that dry well, and he indicated that it has had some issues in large rain events. Furthermore, it would be less expensive to install a single barrel dry well, this new dry well, as opposed to attempting to connect the existing dry well south of the tennis courts to one of the dry wells in the parking lot, approximately 90 linear feet away. By the time we would cut the asphalt trench and install pipe, backfill, and patch back the asphalt, it makes more sense to simply install a new single barrel dry well. Plus, we will end up with a new dry well that will drain freely and does not have 15 years of use in its past.
So it sounds like the architects, instead of doing the calculations initially, they just went off the assumption that what was there would work.
Exactly. However, from what I understand, why the city got involved is that we're not allowed to have it overflow onto the parking lot. That was the initial assumption. Once it overflowed onto the parking lot, the additional dry wells would handle the excess. However, according to the city, we're not allowed for that to even happen. So that's why we have to install the additional.
So the city's only request was do the calculations and find out if that dry well's big enough for that area.
Which the existing one is not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this?
No.
Excellent. Moving on to the next, we were asked to provide a timeline for this project. And you can see here it's displayed on the screen behind me. The timeline for project completion runs approximately through the end of October, through October 22nd. You can see here that it has several steps with different contractors and subcontractors working at different times.
That was exactly what I wanted to see. I appreciate that.
You bet. The final issue that we have here is just a little bit of discussion. Currently, the school district owns a parcel of irrigated agricultural land for hopeful future development. The contract with a local farmer for that piece of land expired September 1st. And it has been brought to my attention that there is another individual who is interested in potentially taking over farming on that next year. However, the current individual is also interested in extending. In consultation with the district's attorney, the current lease for that land stipulates that at the end of the calendar year, the current gentleman who is farming it will remove all of the irrigation infrastructure, the center pivot, all of the pipes. Also, the irrigation water that is being applied to the land is through the current individual's permit or under his water right. There is a connection on that land that we could reconnect. However, it has been inactive for approximately 30 years. So in consultation with our attorney, Cliff Foster, he has brought up several topics that I would like to look into and bring back estimated costs to do these at the next meeting. So I'll just read them off briefly. To determine the cost and feasibility of the district providing its own irrigation water connection through the East Columbia Basin Irrigation District. Again, it does exist, but it has been disconnected. To determine the fair market value of farm leases under which the property owner provides no water or water connection. To determine the estimated time that we will need to reclaim the property and how much advance notice we will need to give the new tenant. And finally, to determine the costs of providing our own dust and weed control on the property if we cannot find anyone to lease it. I have been in discussion with both the past leasee and the potential future leasee. The potential future leasee, because of all the infrastructure he would need to put in, he would like to visit the site and determine the feasibility before committing. As I previously mentioned, the past leasee is fine to continue going. Also, our attorney brought up a great point that we are a school district. We are not in the we're not in the business of being an agricultural landlord, and so we're simply, my approach to this is simply trying to find the least costly way to prevent dust and weeds from accumulating on this property until it can be developed, as that is our legal requirement as the owners of this land.
Will you have an answer to all those questions you just listed?
By the next board meeting is my approximate.
Okay.
That's what I'm shooting for, yes.
Okay.
Estimated costs.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we'll turn it over to Sandra. Here we are.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. So I know that for consistency, the board has asked if we can move all contracts, administrative contracts, for July 1 through June 30th. And so we did consult with the attorney, Cliff Foster, and that certainly can be done. And I think we're all on board to make that consistent. So we can get those revised. And so we'll have to do some adjustments for those contracts that were due to end August 31st and get those adjusted, and we can bring them to the next board meeting if that's what's agreed upon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So the next was extracurricular contracts. I believe the board was asking if that is something that the board needs to see and approve. And according to Cliff Foster, the attorney, if the board has approved a wage or compensation stipend and has approved a contract template, the names of those extracurricular coaches would suffice. However, if the board would like to see those contracts, we can certainly get those in for approval. But as long as we have an approved compensation wage matrix schedule for all contracts, that should suffice.
I think the question that came up, because I brought up the question, was if a coach's contract is a year-to-year contract, then they are hired every year. And I would just ask the question, I think that the board has to formally approve all hires. And so if I've never approved a hire for a coach who has been a coach for 15 years, is that the proper way to do it, or should we as a board be approving that every year since they are one-year contracts? I don't know if it's much about seeing the entire contract or anything like that, but actually approving the hires, because we approve certificated hires without seeing the contracts necessarily. We approve classified hires without seeing their actual contract. So does that make sense?
That makes sense, and that's something that is different than my initial question to Cliff. So I'll go back and get that answered and get that to you. We'll include that in a follow-up.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. This time, we're going to turn it over to Amy.
So she was able to. I just, as a is this on? Test, in my position with kind of being in charge of college and career readiness programs, I really get to focus on ends too, where which is a big part of what informs what I do. We want to graduate kids at a higher rate and with more preparation for post-secondary opportunities. So one of the big things that I have had the privilege to be involved with the Adams County Economic Development Council, as well as kind of an offshoot of that group, is our Othello Industry Council. And in kind of trying to focus on what the most important needs are, we've been out asking a lot of questions and trying to find out from our local industries and employers what they need and what do they want to see. And you've heard me say this before. We get a lot of feedback from local employers that our Othello kids sort of bypass them and think that they want to go outside of Othello to work, to go to school, everything. And so one of the goals of this industry council is to really focus on bringing our employers in connection with our kids. So we have a really neat thing coming up on October 12th. You want to show the... you'll start to see these flyers around town. We've been able to work with some of the industry dollars in conjunction with Molly Curtis through the district on some really neat flyers and registration forms, and we're getting the word out. But on the 12th, we have somewhere around 20 to 25, maybe even more, employers coming in to Othello High School. And it's going to be in the format of kind of two parts. Mayor Logan is going to welcome our kids, first of all, and we're working on a very professional video that's going to kind of showcase assembly lines, programs that are, through John Deere, Avista, Simplot, a bunch of our food industries, as well as the school district, everybody who's in need of entry level all the way through, managerial jobs in their world. So we have the kids and they have the need, and so we've been working on making this connection. So after the kids kind of see what this is all about, then they're going to have a 45 to 50-minute period of time to go to basically exhibitors, like a trade show, and each employer who's on board has been asked to do something kind of interactive so they can show the kids more hands-on what's available. So, side note, the district, I've gotten agreement from Sandra and Orland and Rigo and somebody else, Marion, because we have needs within the district everywhere from teachers to through maintenance and through technology. And we want our kids to see that you don't have to go far to get some great jobs. And many of these employers are willing to pay for the training for these kids over time and then link them into, bigger, more global jobs in the future. So I would love it if any of the board could participate that day, come and see what's going on. We have a meet and greet built in because I have teachers who want to make connections with this same population, for speakers, for STEAM projects. Jessica's very involved with me and what's going on with STEM and STEAM. We always have needs for speakers and for our kids to hear from the locals. So I'm really excited. The other thing that's kind of cool that got brought up a little bit earlier was one of my big goals is the follow-through after this. It's going to be a really neat, high-energy day, but really the importance is going to be the connections we make with our local employers afterwards. So we're going to have various ways for kids to sign up where they were interested, and I'm going to be bringing those employers back into the schools. And as part of our high school and beyond plan for seniors, the kids, before this happens, so in the next few weeks, are going to be identifying 3 careers that they're interested in. And I've been talking a lot about careers that maybe need technical training, but this also includes college and 4-year, 2-year universities. So no matter what direction kids are going, they're going to identify 3 employers in our community that they potentially could work for in the future, including CBHA if they're in the medical field, or I had a boy today. I had the opportunity to go to DOHS and kind of roll out our senior project ideas. So they were the first ones to be able to hear it. Josh Tovar asked me to come in and start to talk to the students because we want to get going. It's a little easier to move quicker at Desert Oasis, and the goal for the high school is next Tuesday, the whole Futures team is going to spend a whole day kind of on a retreat. So to answer Caden's question earlier, Mr. Vergara really wanted the whole staff to have some input on how we unroll this to the seniors. But it's going to be something very similar. And then after they make those connections, they're going to hopefully do like a 4-hour site visit to some of our local employers. And even past that, they don't have to stay local, but that's going to be one of the goals. And then the final step will be them actually applying, either doing a job application, apprenticeship application, a college application, military, whatever it is to take that first step towards their future. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I have some registration forms if any of you are interested. The more we get out and talk about it, the more emails and phone calls I'm getting. So I really think it's going to be a neat event that we want to continue to build on in the future.
So, Amy, the showcase is Thursday, October 12th.
Yes.
There's no time on the flyer, so what time will that?
So if you're interested, that's kind of to conjure up interest,
Okay.
and so then the registration form has all the details. But I think we have Orland's allowing them to come in at like 5 o'clock in the morning because we want to start with a meet and greet with our staff before school even starts. And then we're rolling 1,500 kids through this day in 70-minute blocks, 8th graders all the way through seniors, including all the Desert Oasis kids and everybody. So with some time also to invite parents in if they can just kind of come and pop in and meet people and see what's going on.
Nice.
So
It's great.
Wonderful.
So just a general question about the vendors. Are you getting interest from farms?
we are.
Good.
So Steve McFadden is kind of the head of all of this, and he's been pounding the pavement. He started early in the summer on that, and between he and kind of there's a steering committee that involves a lot of the district people as well as the employers who've sort of been in since the birth of this idea. I'm going to go speak with Rotary next week, and just the fair, we're going to have a table at the fair where we're talking about all these partnerships that are coming for the district and our local people. And so we've had lots of interest. It's free to the exhibitors, but of course there's a $500 donation to be a sponsor, and we have more than enough money to pull this off. So we're actually going to bank some of it so that we can do a little bit more, in the future even. We're creating a promotional video through the day to be able to go out there when people hear, hey, I didn't know about that, but they want to get in on it. I'm going to have a lot of ways to make those connections afterwards.
That's great.
Fantastic. I love the tie-in to ends too. Is just it's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy. Now we're going to have John come take us home. At least in this section.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to present. It's just sitting here and listening to those that have gone before me. It's an exciting time to be in our district. The work that we heard from Scrutiny happening, Amy with the careers, and just some neat opportunities for our students right now, and appreciate being part of that work. So we'll go through these first slides pretty quick. We're going to have Talia make sure she keeps her fingers scrolling here. So for those that don't know me, John Wiseman, Director of Professional Learning. I have the opportunity this year to really work with teachers on their professional growth and professional development, and some other aspects with the mentoring for our new teachers, looking at being a part of the professional learning communities that are happening. and partnering with our instructional coaches. And so some neat opportunities there. And tonight we want to look at, within that category, some of those areas of the professional learning that's happened over the summertime, and then just explain a little bit about our professional learning model, this 70-20-10. And then we'll wrap it up with personalized professional learning and what that looks like. So this is, I don't know if you've seen this before. All right, maybe a joke. Just a few times, right? But the pipeline, the opportunities that we have, the vision that's been brought to us from Dr. Hurst. And a lot of the work that was done this summer was really focusing in that first quadrant around skill development. Skill development around for our teachers and educators in our district, and then transfer that to our students. And then as we look at the instructional vision, keeping that in front of us, that idea of creating and cultivating a safe environment, respecting and forward instruction is the intentional, engaging, challenging, and accessible. Those were the focus areas for a lot of the professional learning that occurred this summer for our students. And as was mentioned earlier with Scootney, with the district continuing to focus on reading comprehension and math concepts and procedures, this is just some of the trainings that occurred primarily in August, some in June, took most of July off, and then in August. And so around English language arts, this basically what the table has is the grade bands that it was the training was directed for, the number of participants and the dates that they were offered. And so you can see within a short amount of time we had numerous different sessions and trying to reach across the different spectrum of ages to what they'll be working on. So from intervention, reading, training to core and comprehensive, and including writing as a big focus as part of that. When we look at the STEM or the science, tech, and engineering, again, a number of different opportunities that came about. One of those that occurred in June was that Think About workshop, so I think that some of you had an opportunity to participate in, and so that was a kind of a great way to start our professional learning for the summer. But there was work around math, but also having an emphasis in science as well, and making sure that we really provide that being a focus, make sure that we're providing training and professional development around that. Some others that additional ones, Jennifer Garza has done great work with preschool and early learning, and had opportunities there, as well as in humanities, social studies, and we have a lot of new hires this year. And so we have what we kind of jokingly, maybe with the Marine as a superintendent, but a boot camp for them to help get the year started off on the right foot. So if you take all of those opportunities and take all of the hours, the trainings, and you add all those together, we had 4,470 and counting hours of professional learning. So if you were to divide that by 24, that's over 186 days of instruction that happened. One thing that I want to point out within that number is none of that could have been possible, one, without the support of the board and the funding for that to be able to do that. Also, the teachers who sacrificed their time during the summer to come in and willingly participate in that, who really have an interest in growing professionally and wanting those opportunities. The turnouts were really remarkable for those summer months. And then a majority of those trainings were actually performed by folks in our district. So experts within our district providing that instruction. And so there are many hours that aren't included in that of preparation and preparing the materials and doing that and coordinated building. So just want to make sure that I thank everyone that was a part of that work. One thing that was critical for us is to make sure that we had feedback with each session. Was it meaningful? Did it meet your needs? Was the expectation met? Is it something that you can walk away with and do something with? It's one thing to be able to offer. It's another thing to be able to have it be meaningful and be able to use it. And so we had QR codes at each of the sessions, as well as a link and access to Chromebooks. Sorry, I said the Chromebook word. But being able to get feedback that we could collect from each session so that we can make improvements for next year. And so these next ones, we're not going to go through each one, but just the categories are all the same. The first one, the question presented to the participants was, were the learning targets and success criteria clearly stated? The next quadrant was I able to meet that success criteria? So it's one, did the presenter state what the objectives were, and do they feel like they met it? Did the workshop provide a deeper understanding of what to teach in my classroom, and why I'm teaching it, so that application component of it, and would I recommend this session to colleagues? And so as we just kind of scroll through, and we would want, 5 would be ideal, that is strongly agree, and the 1 would be disagree. But as we look through we received some really positive feedback around the training that was happening. There are some things that I learned through this experience. One is to be able to produce that professional development calendar sooner, so that teachers can be able to have more time to make plans for that and around their time with their families and those sort of events. And but I feel like overall it was a successful summer for that. So what now? One of the quotes that I like, they compare it to riding a bicycle, that as long as you stay upright and move forward, if you keep up the momentum. And so that's what we want to do now. And so that brings us to the idea of the 70-20-10. So the 10% are those formal trainings. So everything that kind of happened in August, when those sit-downs, get together, that starts the conversation. But if we were to end there, that we're only getting to just a fraction of the level of learning that we want to get to. So that next piece would be that 20%, and that's when you look at the professional learning communities, planning together, working with an instructional coach, the mentoring program that we have, teachers being able to collaborate with one another. Having those discussions will advance that learning even further, another 20%. But to get to that, to the really being able to have that deep understanding and really owning it, if you will, they need that hands-on experience. And so with that 70%, that's the work that they're going to do in their classrooms. That's the work that they're doing right now with the students in front of them and applying these different strategies. And as they do that, coming back and saying, hey, this worked really well, or this didn't work as I thought it would, and be able to provide that support. And so it's important that while we have these great sessions, we can't just say, woo, now we're done, we'll wait for next year, that we need to keep these opportunities coming forward. So on our next slide, these are just some of the different ways that we're trying to reach each of those quadrants, if you will. So in a moment, I'm going to talk further about personalized professional learning and the opportunities that are going to be there, but that would be on the individual or online instruction, partnering with our instructional coaches, and like I said, with new teachers in particular, working with their mentor. At the building and team, that's where the PLCs, sometimes we divide up with the teacher PLCs, or the buildings have an opportunity to provide training at the building level of the district. We rotate those, and so good opportunities. And then we have contracts with our consultants that will come, and so they might come and do the big with everyone, all buildings, but then they have an opportunity to be at each individual site and to customize and tailor their support based on the building needs for their students and teachers. And then the district will continue to work on teacher clarity, our district goals, the ends, and the work of our team.
John, how often is the district in the buildings themselves during PLCs?
So we ideally, what it would be if there was no holidays and anything would be 2 PLCs are for the teachers, meaning that they own that and can do their planning. The first Monday would be the building, and the third would be the district. Mm-hmm. And so, but as it plays out and making sure, and rightfully so, making sure that teachers have the majority of those PLC days, works out to, I believe, 6 or 7 for opportunities around professional development this year. This is only...
Good. I have a follow-up about that point, and it's only because it's timely. Today was a really good example of it for the teaching and learning team. It was a teacher PLC day, so the teachers own that opportunity to get together and collaborate. We had the 6th grade math teachers, math science folks at MMS, reached out to the teaching and learning team around this idea related to teacher clarity around the standards. And so we've developed a rollout plan to share that with every teacher. 3 through 8 is sort of our initial hit. But that was an example of that team being invited and participating with. So that was a new opportunity for us. And since this is the first Teacher PLC Day, we look forward to creating more of those opportunities for the teaching and learning team.
Awesome.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. So this is something that's new this year that I'm very excited about, and it's called Personalized Professional Learning. And basically what that is teachers have an opportunity. There's a very simple form that they have, and they have an opportunity to set a professional goal for themselves. What is an area that this year that they want to grow in? And with that, they would write out the goal, and then what sort of training opportunities or professional learning opportunities will they need to be able to reach that goal? And so with their principal, they would create that opportunity, and every certificated staff member in our district has up to $500 that they can access for their own professional learning. And so we're still going to have buildings be able to run their goals and be able to have that. But if I'm a brand new teacher and classroom management is something that I want to grow in this year, being a first year, they can find opportunities for that, whether it be through the ESD or online courses, or being able to pay for their own subs so that they can do observations within our district. So there's lots of different ways that they could utilize that funds. Or maybe I'm a veteran teacher, but it's the first time that I have a child with a specific learning need, and I need some additional support so I can help that child. There's an opportunity for that. And so that cost can be used to cover subs. It can be, if it's training outside of their contracted day, it could be used for reimbursement, pay for registration fees, online fees, release days, as we talked about, mileage reimbursement. So really the idea, though, is teachers want to be successful, and we have some of the, I'm always impressed and amazed by how hardworking our teachers are and how much commitment that they have, and this just gives them an opportunity to pursue that in a very individualized and personal way. So excited for that opportunity. And so I think that's what we just talked about. And so I know it's between me and your family, but wanted to see if there's any questions or feedback either around the professional development that was offered this summer, the professional learning model, or the personalized learning plans.
I appreciate the personalized professional learning opportunity, though I have to ask as a board member. So if with every certificated teacher that we have in our district, if they all took advantage of that, and up to $500 can be given to them, I just want to know, is there is there a fund that provides that?
Yeah, it's the Chris Hurst Fund. No. What we did, one of the things that was new is additional LAP funds that were provided this year. But even prior to having that, it was looking at, instead of giving just a one lump sum to each building that they could use for various things. The buildings will still definitely have opportunities to use building funds for training, but we wanted to set aside some of that within the building fund at each site that could support this learning.
I'm assuming that this idea was worked into the budget for the professional development.
Yes. Yes.
In our budget we just saw. Yeah. Is that what you were asking?
That was.
Yes. Yeah. This will be no.
Okay.
We need to add. No. It's already been added. Or a part of that. Yeah.
I don't really have much to ask. I just think you did a really good job presenting it, John, and it sounds great. I'm guessing the 70-20-10 model is not unique to adult learners, right?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
And so that goes back to that active participation and engagement, right? The learning is in the doing. And so, absolutely.
I think it's a great plan. And it's good to see that. I appreciate that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item D1 for the board's. It's an opportunity for the board to look at the monitoring reports from our superintendent for EL6 and EL7. which are staff compensation and staff evaluations. And so this is, if for those of you who probably are looking at our agenda and it looks a little different, we've reorganized according to the approval of GP8 that happened at our last board meeting. We've reorganized our agenda so that under assurance of organizational performance, we will now be including monitoring reports from our superintendent. Do you have any questions or comments?
Well, these typically are going to be action items. We'll take action on acceptance and we'll take action on approval. So tonight, this will be something that I'm assuming is going to be moved into the meeting on Wednesday so that we can
correct.
approve these things. Okay.
So item D2 again is just the board approval of monitoring response documents. And so that'll happen on Wednesday. Moving on to item E, and as you can see, item E under policy review has a large number of policies, ELs and other GPs, and part of the reason why there's such a large number of ELs and GPs in this policy review is because we've asked Thalia to make some corrections to many of our policies that were not that were changed as far as our introduction and our there was some just words that needed to be changed to make it more consistent with all our other policies, and so
It's probably less about correction than just consistency, right? Just
Right.
so that they're worded the same, I would say.
correct. So that is going to stay on for policy review for our next board meetings, just so that we can get consensus from the board that all those policies were changed and correctly changed. So
I would request, just for the sake of staying within our calendar, that at least items E1 through 4, because they're the normal processes for our policy review, that those be included on Wednesday.
okay.
But maybe all those ELs that were just for us to review of the changes, maybe they can wait to the next board meeting. But especially the linkage committee, I really want us to be able to get moving on establishing that board linkage committee, so we can start getting feedback from that.
So if you could add those, just items 1 through 4
Awesome.
for Wednesdays. Okay. Moving on quickly to item F, and just for the board and the student reps information, we do have our Adams County Fair this week, beginning on the 13th through the 16th. We also have, for the board members and student reps, our Othello High School visit will be October 3rd. So October 3rd, my assumption is that somewhere right around 7:30 in the morning, we will have our Othello High School visit. So if you can put those on your calendars today, that would be great. I will also remind the rest of the board at our next board meeting about our high school visit.
Well, we'll have to get details on that, but they start at half an hour later than
that's
the
true.
elementary, so it might be a different time, but
So if you can check into that.
it all depends on the format that we use, right?
Right. Great. So moving on to item F2, board self-assessment of meetings. So I think that Director Simmons and myself will be conducting a quick survey monkey of our meeting prior to adjourning this meeting.
Today's the 11th. You just click on the link, did it work?
I don't have the link.
Scroll down.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Did we talk about have the student reps be part of the
No, we
self-assessment?
haven't had that discussion. probably be a good item to add to the director discussions.
Mine is thinking a lot right now.
Okay.
So I hit done, and I got my connection, your connection was interrupted message, so.
I believe I have
How many do you have answering?
one.
And yours went through?
Mine went through.
All right, I'm gonna go back and try to resubmit it.
Okay.
You're lurking, Rico. I'm connected. I mean, I don't think I lost my connection, but it's not liking the submission, I guess. Yeah, I hit back. And this is what I was doing when I did in the first place, just stalling out. It's almost like I lost my network connection, but I'm connected, right? Are you gonna make me fill it out again? For more awkward silence. That won't even open, that's weird. What did you do? That's weird, it opened up from the link. No problem the first time. I can just tell you if I agree with Juan on his answers.
Mine were all commendable.
I agree.
Okay. We can move on. We don't have to wait.
Yeah, let's look at them and know that we can discuss them.
So, yeah, there was only 2 board members present, 2 student reps,
I agree.
general. The agenda was well planned. So under the general meeting behavior, I had commendable for every question.
I did the same.
Okay. And then under the governance principles review, and the yes and no answers, I answered yes to everyone.
Well, I answered not applicable to most of them, but just because we didn't have any action or discussion about anything. But I don't know that that would have changed the score because I think NA is a net 0, right?
You're right, counts as nothing. So overall mark, I gave a commendable.
So did I.
So,
Sounds good.
all right.
It's a
Moving
fair
on.
assessment. I don't need it now. Thank you.
Okay, so item F3, I will entertain a motion. Well, I guess we don't need it. To adjourn this meeting.
Means we
Our
can't
meeting-
leave because we can't adjourn.
Our meeting is adjourned.
This
Thank
meeting
you,
never happened.
ladies and gentlemen, for being here.